Hi guys, welcome to the teen pregnancy review video. I'm going to do what I've been doing for these review videos. I'm going to take you through, in this case it will be all of the self-study questions and the answers, and then I'll take you through the activity that I had in this case, and we'll wrap it up in one video, I think, this time. So the first self-study question: construct a concept map that describes the events that occur in fertilization of the ovum. Here is my version of that. Of course, this is the figure that it came from. So what you have is you have the sperm that approaches the oocyte, and it goes into this hypermodal phase, and it attacks the target. It works its way through what's left of the corona radiata. When you get ovulation, some of the cells still stick, and then it hits and it binds to the zona pellucida, and the acrosomal reaction takes place. So you guys will remember the acrosome covers the head of the sperm. The sperm binds to the zona pellucida, it releases the enzymes that are in that acrosome, and they eat away at the zona pellucida. And once the sperm has tunneled through, the fertilization takes place. The head sort of disconnects from the tail. This is, of course, where the nuclear material is. So for all practical purposes, what you're doing is you're injecting the nuclear material into the cell through endocytosis. Okay. The second meiotic division is initiated with the fertilization, and your second polar body will appear once that happens. And of course, winner takes all, right? So again, this is another nice figure that sort of takes you through the process. You weave through the follicular cells that are stuck to the zona pellucida, and you bind the zona pellucida. A rise in calcium in the sperm triggers the excitosis of the acrosomal enzymes, and you get the acrosomal reaction. And the hydrolytic enzymes tunnel you through the zona pellucida, and you get endocytosis of the contents of the head of the sperm, the nuclear contents. A rise in calcium inside the oocyte triggers the cortical reaction, and this is why winner takes all, because when the calcium goes up, you get exocytosis of granules that harden this zona pellucida, so no other sperms can get through. I mean, at that point, they're not able to tunnel through any further. Everything hardens, and you get fertilization by one sperm. Okay, and there's your second meiotic division, and you get the magic of life, right? Okay. So describe the function of human chorionic growth, HCG. Human chorionic gonadotropin, excuse me. It's produced by the syncytiotrophoblasts. So that's these cells that eventually become the chorionic villi. Okay, they're early on. They're the syncytioblastic oocytes, and they're the epithelia that are covering what are eventually going to become those villi, and that is secreted and upon implantation, and it binds to LH receptors in the ovary and maintains the corpus luteum. So you maintain the LH, you maintain the corpus luteum, and you keep secreting progesterone and estrogen during pregnancy. And so that lets the mother know that, hey, I'm pregnant. Don't cycle again, right? And then eventually the placenta takes over, producing the progesterone, and the HCG stops. Okay, and you can see this graph here has the progesterone that is produced by the corpus luteum. The HCG causes it to maintain that secretion of progesterone when ordinarily it would have declined, and you would have started a new cycle. And then the placenta eventually takes over. So this is due to the HCG, and then the placenta takes over, and you get more progesterone from the placenta. That's the black line. The HCG goes away because you don't need it anymore. Okay? All right. Describe the role of the hypothalamus in lactation. That's this figure. So you decrease dopamine release, which increases prolactin secretion. So here's our dopamine coming from the hypothalamus, and ordinarily increased dopamine inhibits, that's the blue line, secretion of prolactin from the pituitary. So if you decrease the dopamine when, due to the suckling stimuli, then you get suckling, you get this neuroendocrine response, and the dopamine goes down, you relieve this inhibition, and you secrete prolactin. It decreases GnRH secretion, which inhibits ovulation. Again, as I mentioned in my pregnancy video, not a great idea to rely on that as a method of contraception, but it does make you less likely to get pregnant. Of course, this is strongest when there's actual suckling going on, so it's sort of going to spike and wane, and so not a great idea to depend upon it all the time. At least that's my understanding. And then it increases TRH and PRH, prolactin-releasing hormone, and the role is unknown. Don't worry about it. Okay, so I only put that in there because they're in this figure. But the truth of the matter is, nobody knows what their role is, and I don't really care if you know it. I do care that you know the dopamine, okay? And the hypothalamus will increase synthesis of oxytocin, cause the oxytocin synthesis to increase in the posterior pituitary, and you will get increased release of oxytocin because of that. Of course, that connection is sort of direct from the posterior pituitary, sort of neurally down this stalk, unlike the anterior pituitary, which is fed by a portal circulation. You guys remember the anatomy behind that. Okay? All right, so that's the role of the hypothalamus here. All right, as far as our activity goes, it all starts with estradiol. It's basically draw a concept map that leads to parturition down here, basically. So the top part of this was the CRH clock, which is how the mother knows that the fetus is fully cooked and ready for parturition to take place. And then the bottom part of this is the process of parturition that actually takes place when the time is right. And it all keys on estradiol here. So increased estradiol production from the placenta increases CRH production in the placenta. That stimulates the fetal pituitary to increase ACH, which causes the fetal adrenal gland to increase cortisol, which helps with fetal maturation. It helps with maturation of the lungs and closure completion of the maturation of the circulatory system, closure of the ductus arteriosus, things like that. And it also causes secretion of androgen, which is a precursor for estradiol. So you get a positive feedback loop here where you're increasing estradiol all the time and increasing CRH. And then finally you hit, and of course you guys know that estradiol increases the contractile activity of the myometrium. Eventually you hit a point where you've hit the critical concentration of estradiol and CRH, and the clock goes off and it's time for parturition to take place. So estradiol, in terms of what's happening on the mother side, it's increasing gap junctions in the myometrium. That's increasing contraction. It's increasing oxytocin receptors, What happens is the contractions increase until you start to shove the fetus up against the cervix. And once that happens, you get a neuroendocrine response, and you get release of oxytocin, which binds these receptors, and you get stronger contractions. And you also get release of prostaglandins. This line probably should really go from here to here. And that increases the contractions in the uterus as well. And eventually, so the contractions are getting stronger, and what happens is you eventually shove the fetus out in the world, whether it likes it or not, and you get parturition, okay? So all of that is encapsulated here in these two figures. This is the CRH clock, where you have estradiol increasing prostaglandins in the placenta, which increases CRH production, which increases cortisol, which causes your maturation, and also increases CRH production in the placenta. You get secretion of androgen, DHEA, that increases estradiol because it's a substrate for estradiol production. That increases CRH. You're building and building CRH until you hit this critical concentration. And here's what's happening on the maternal side during that time in response to the estradiol. Your myometrium is developing, you're increasing your gap junctions, you're increasing your oxytocin receptors. And then eventually what happens is you get your contractions, the fetus gets shoved up against the cervix, you get your neuroendocrine reflex, and you increase oxytocin from the mother, which feeds back and causes contraction of the uterus, and you get increases in prostaglandins, which also feeds back and causes increased contraction of the uterus. And so you eventually get parturition in this. So this is encapsulated in this figure here. All right? All right. So that's all I've got. Thank you for your attention. You guys know where to find me if you need help leading up in terms of studying for the exam. And I encourage you to come and find me and talk to me and email me and come meet with me, and we'll get whatever problems you're having straightened out.